Like many of you, I have found myself reviewing older images as we're kind of stuck here, not being able to travel as much during the COVID-19 virus. So I was going through some older images that I thought had potential compositionally, but lighting and kind of story were all wrong. Now, this image right here, this is actually in Olympic National Park in Washington. And when I came across this scene, I had it in my mind what the final print would look like. And I knew that there was a story here. But of course, the exposure didn't exactly work. Now, you look at the histogram, and there's maybe a little bit of shadow clipping, and there's some stuff very close. Actually, nothing really. Because you see you have this kind of cyan thing. That means there's something really close. And on the highlight side, no, we're fine. Actually, yeah, I just found the highlight clipping. Look where it is. It's back in there, and that's one of those things that, yeah, nobody cares. However, the color's all wrong. The story's all wrong. And the story I have is that you want to follow this path. You want to see where it goes. But the problem is there's so many other distractions. Also, the color temperature is all wrong for the mood that I'm thinking of. So let's first just do, let me just add some texture and clarity here, just to give it a little bit more crispiness. Because what I'm seeing is, yeah, I'm seeing something much darker with a light path through the middle. So let's see what we can do with that. I'm going to start with an oval gradated filter. And I'm thinking something about maybe like that. I'm going to bring it down to the start of the path and rotate it. Rotate it a little more than that. Whoops, created another one by mistake. So over here again, let's rotate that a little more and bring it down. In fact, I'm going to squish it and rotate it even a little more. Now, what I'm actually after, first of all, is everything but this. So that's where I want to turn off the invert. And if we hit the O key for the overlay, you get to see what it is picking. So there we go. Now, first of all, the background is both too light and too yellow. So I'm going to bring the exposure down and increase the contrast a bunch. And you can see, wow, just doing that already is looking better. I mentioned it's too yellow. Let's add some blue to get it more kind of that dark primeval forest that I kind of was feeling as I was walking through here. So yeah, I'm thinking something more like that. And I think maybe I'm going to darken it up even a little bit more. I want kind of that dark moodiness of this. Now there's other things going on. This green over here is still too bright, and the color in here is wrong. So I want to switch that out. So here's what I'm going to do. All right, so we have our one radial filter. In fact, gee, I'm still thinking, let's even go darker. And probably going to open up the shadows a little bit, but keeping it kind of dark. Actually, let's open up the shadows a little more. All right, now I'm going to duplicate this oval by holding down the Control key. I believe it's right-click on Windows, and click on Duplicate. Now, that made it super dark. That's not what I'm after. But I do want to just take this one and just shift it over a little bit and turn on Invert. Now, I didn't want this to go that dark, so I'm going to double-click up here where it says Effect to reset it. Now, let's make some changes. I'm going to make that a little bit bluer also, but I'm also going to make it more red. Actually, you know what? Let's go yellow. Let's make this warm, and let's make it a lot more saturated. All right, now we're getting this kind of path color and also the red in the tree that I remember being there. But it's gone into some places that I don't want. I don't want it to happen on this foliage here. So let's get a brush. Hold down the Alt key to turn it into a minus. You can see it's a minus now. And I'm going to just paint it out of this spot because I don't want it to affect there. Now, actually, you can see it's where it's affecting. I actually do want it to go warmer up this tree. So we're going to add it to the tree. Let's add, in fact, let's hit the O key so we can see. Let's add it there. I also want to add it. Now the path wraps around the tree and starts to head in deeper into the forest over here. So I'm going to put it there as well and add that. Let's, again, continue to get it off of this tree. Let's get off of there. We may do something with that later. So let's just get rid of this area here. In fact, let me turn off auto mask to make sure I get all of it. Yeah. Okay, so now we've gotten this area. Let's hit our O and see where we are. Okay, that's looking a lot better. So let's hit done with that. Now I want to do a little bit more light painting. Again, I want to lead you down this path that goes down around this tree and off into the woods here. So there's some other areas that are still too bright. So let's get another brush, and we're just going to paint freeform here. I'll hit the O key to turn on the overlay. And this area right here is just simply still too light. So let's get, including underneath that tree. So, and actually back here is as well. So let's hit the O to toggle that off, and let's bring the exposure way down along with the whites, which will take away some of the heat of some of those highlights. And that's looking a lot better. Okay, what else? This tree I want lit up a little bit more. I want to bring down the brightness and the intensity of the saturation of some of these greens. So let's hit done. And I'm going to go into Use Saturation Luminance and click on Saturation. And I'm going to bring the saturation down of some of these greens here. Good, that takes away some of that. I'm also going to bring down the luminance. Some of these bright greens. I missed my luminance slider. Luminance, there we go. And let's bring that. You can see as I drag this down, that's too much, but I just wanted you to see the effect. Let's take that down a little bit. All right, so now let's go back to our brush. I want to work on this tree a little bit more. I'm going to hit the O key, make it a little bit smaller. And I want to open up this tree and bring back some of its redness out of the shadows that it was exhibiting. So again, let's hit the O, let's open up the shadows on that some more, and let's bring the overall exposure. There we go. That's how I remember seeing this tree. Make sure I'm getting it all. Yes, I like that. Okay, looking good. Now, what else? Well, it's where are you looking? That's when you're taking a look at your composition. Where do your eyes go? Obviously, you're going to go to here. You're going to follow this path. But as you're following the path, there are still some distractions. Namely, back here is a little too light. Back here is a little too light. And maybe this part right here, right behind those trees. So let's get our brush again. This time I'm going to turn on Auto Mask. Get O for my overlay. Let's get there, underneath this tree, and this area back here. Some of these greens are just too light. And I think we got pretty much all the ones that are distractions there. So we'll toggle that off. We'll bring down the highlights in those. And we're going to bring the exposure down too, I guess, and even the whites. I'm going to darken those up a bit, just so they're not a distraction. Now, something odd. We have this one tree back here that's a different color. Yes, it really was a different color, but it's a distraction. So let's get our new brush. Let's bring this down. I have Auto Mask on again. I'm going to turn on the overlay. And watch this. I'm just going to click once right in the middle of the trunk there. Then I'm going to come up to the top, hold down the Shift key, and click again, and it captures the entire thing. So let's turn that off. What's the problem? Well, the highlights are too bright. We'll bring that way down. The whites are too bright. And even the saturation. Let's bring the saturation. Let's make it closer to the gray of the surrounding trees. In fact, we'll even darken it a little bit more so that it just looks like another one of those trees. I don't know if it's a different tree or if there was some sunlight hitting that one, but it was a distraction. Same thing, there was a little spot in there. Since this is live, we can still do this. And something's going on right here too. Let's darken this up. In fact, that's something else we're going to have to deal with separately, because we also have this sky area up here. So let's get another brush and do that. I'll get a nice big brush. Hit the O key so we can see what we're getting. Nope, I missed. Get there. All right. And right in there. Get these little white spots. Same as in here. All right. Get those too. Now, we're not going to delete these. We just want to bring down the brightness a bit so it doesn't distract our eyes from the rest of the scene. So let's bring the whites down on that. I'm going to make it kind of more of a gray. And we'll even bring the exposure down. It's okay. You're still seeing through a little bit to that sky, but it is no longer an issue. Now, I might want to kind of form a barrier, physical barrier, with this tree. I think this tree could use a little sprucing up and kind of have it leading you in between the two of them. So let's draw a line down the bright side of this tree, just like that. Again, I hit O. Let's bring the exposure up on that. And let's add a bunch of clarity to really bring out that texture. Yes, I like that a lot. Okay, so what else? Well, as I look in here, this brush, this foliage here on the ground is probably still a little bit too yellow. So let's add that back in. Let me turn off auto mask because I want to make sure I get all of it. Let's just take this area here. Actually, it's kind of coming into here a little bit as well. In fact, even maybe a little bit right there. So let's O on that. Let's take some of the yellow out. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Because again, we don't want to make that the focus of the image. The focus of the image is this path leading you back here. In fact, while we're at it, let's go to New and hit the O. I want you to go here. That's where you're headed. That's where the trail is taking you. So let's bring up the exposure back there. We don't want to make it, bring the highlights down. We want to open up the shadows more than the exposure. And we want to keep it subtle. We don't want to make it look crazy, but we want to make your eye go there. All right, so let's take a look and see where we started and where we ended up. This is starting to look really cool. Let's go over. There's where we started with. Really blah, right? But compositionally, do you see that this really had potential? It's just visualizing it and then knowing the approaches to take in the software to turn it into the image that you were after. And I'm loving this. All right, what else do I want to do? I want to create another subtle light path. So I'm going to get the brush again, get a nice big one. Oh, wrong one. So I'm going to get a brush, get a nice big one. I'm going to keep auto mask off. Let's turn on our overlay. Now this is going to be a subtle one. So I'm just going to literally just have a path that goes there. And we'll hit O. And I'm going to bring up the shadows a little bit. As I mentioned, we're going to keep this one subtle. Bring up the exposure just a little bit. By the way, when you're doing this, I find how much exposure increase it needs. If you look away from the screen, like actually I'm looking here at this panel as I'm adjusting this, in the corner of your eye, you'll see the very slight brightness change. When you start to see it, that means you're in about the right spot. Okay. And maybe even a little more than that. I see I'm going to have to take a little bit of it out. And also, this should be redder because this kind of mulch on the ground was kind of red. And we'll actually add some red. Do I want yellow? Yes, I do. A little bit of yellow also. All right, but now this has gone too bright. So what I need to do is hold down the Alt. And what I'm going to do is over here on the flow, I'm going to turn the flow down because I want to take a little bit of it out, but not all of it. And this is, here we go. You see, it just take away some of the over brightness of that. All right, let's hit done. Where else do we need to go? Oh, two more things. Let's go to Effects and add a vignette. Yeah, I think something about like that. And I think maybe I want to darken this up a little bit more. Let's get a big brush with auto mask off. Hit kind of this whole area here. I just want to darken it a smidge more. Again, to force the viewer down the path. And while I'm at it, I'm going to darken up in here. And all through here. And in fact, even this distant spot. Let's darken this stuff up. Because again, we want to aid the viewer into getting down our path. All right, so hit O. And let's bring the exposure down a bit. Yeah, just about, oh, that's perfect. All right, now one last thing. I think I want to add maybe a little more light back in. And I'm going to do it just with another radial filter here. Because again, this is kind of part of the spot we're going to go. Kind of through here. It's kind of leading you. Think of it as a beacon. And I'm going to hit the O key so we can see. And I want to take it out of here. So let's get the brush, hit the minus, and just leave the, oh, I forgot I turned the flow down there. Bring that back up. And let's leave this alone because we've already gone through the trouble of darkening that up. Yeah, just something like there. And let's bring the exposure up a little bit. I generally find about a quarter to a third of a stop is all it needs. All right. So let's go to full screen, see where we are. And there we are. Now we have something that really kind of leads you down the path. And when you think that we started here, wow, what a difference. Again, compositionally, I like this. Obviously, the light and the color is terrible compared to what I had in my mind's eye, which was looking like this. So is there anything else we should do here? I see one last little thing, and this may be something you like or don't. There's still a lot of sky here, and by having this shot as vertical as it is, these tree trunks do have a tendency to make you look up and away from here. I think maybe cropping off the top of this is going to aid this image a little bit, so I'm going to create a virtual copy of it. And let's hit the R key to bring up our cropping tool. And then let's just bring that top down a bit. I'm thinking about there because now we have our path is actually hitting the intersection of one of the strong points. And let's hit done there. And do we like that better? Let's back and forth. Here's before the crop. Here's after the crop. Interesting. They're both valid. I actually like them both. It might depend on how big a print I'm going to make. There's the one with the sky. There's the one without any sky. Actually, you know what? I think the answer is actually in between there a little bit. I think it just maybe needed a little bit off the top and maybe a little off the bottom. Maybe something like that. Let's try that. Yeah, I think I like that better. See how these little fine adjustments in crop can have a huge effect on the image? Okay, so there we go. And here's our just little bit of crop. Takes away some of the distractions. Now the trees, because they're not going up so tall above the path, don't lead you out of the image. Now they just form a guide to take you around the path, and you wonder where that's going. Spoiler alert, if you follow this path to the end, and that takes you to the beach side of Olympic National Park where those gorgeous sea stacks are sitting right off the beach waiting for you to be photographed. Another photograph for another day. So I really like where we've gone with this image, but you know what? I can't leave well enough alone. There's something I have to try, and I'm going to use one of my favorite plugins to add just a little more impact and pop to this. So let's go ahead and go to Photo and edit this into Nix Viveza. Up into Viveza. If you're not familiar with the program, it's actually a fairly easy program to work with. It's very powerful. This is just a split screen that will show you before and after. Let's move this over to the left for now. Couple things real quick. One, structure in Viveza is similar to clarity, but it's a different effect. So let's add some structure to it. It's a subtle, very clean thing. I'm also going to brighten the entire image up a little bit, add a little bit of saturation, and add a little bit of contrast. And just those few sliders, that much. Let's drag back and forth, and you can see there's what we started with, and there's where we are now. It just adds that little subtle bit of lighting. Could I have done this in Lightroom or Photoshop? Yes, but Viveza just makes it so easy to do. While I'm here, I think I might want this a little bit brighter, so I'm going to get a control point, which is right up here. Click on there. Let's make it a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to increase the brightness. Let's see what that does. Yeah, it's doing a little too much. Let's keep it a little closer to home here. Let's add some more structure to that. And let's bring the brightness up maybe a little bit more. Maybe add some more contrast to it. I may change my mind on this. I may not like it, but let's see. Now, in order to stay in the tree, I need to keep this small. Viveza doesn't have a brush per se. There is a brush-like thing that you can do, but we're not going to do that now. And nope, one last time. Let's make that smaller. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, which is going to allow me to drag up. There we go, right around there. And maybe not quite as bright up higher. All right, so now let's go back and forth. And yes. Is there anywhere that's too light when we did this? Perhaps. Maybe back in here has gotten a little too light. So let's use our control point again, and this time we'll bring the brightness down of that area in the deep middle. Yeah, that's good. That's what it needed. And maybe one more here. This little thing has gotten a little too bright. Let's make that tiny. And we'll bring the brightness down there. Just again, I want to take some of the heat off of it. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Come over there. And this one bothers me up here. This got a little bit too bright. Bring the brightness down on those leaves. And I think that's it. There we go. So yeah, look where we started and look where we ended up. We added some more pop. It added some more color contrast to it. And the structure change is, think of it as a localized contrast. It adds a lot of pop to an image, even with some very subtle adjustments. So you just click Save, and it puts it back into Lightroom next to the original. Okay, so here's full screen of the entire image before we sent it into Viveza. And let's take a look and see how subtle yet powerful the Viveza edits were. There it is. It's very subtle. Again, we can go back and forth. There's before, there's after. But it's a very subtle yet powerful little addition to really make the image pop. So I think that's the answer. And as far as cropping goes, I'm still unsure about the vertical or a little bit more horizontal, but we'll just leave it here for now. While I'm here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a virtual copy of this, of our Viveza edit, and I'm going to split the difference again. I'm going to bring up the crop tool. I'm going to bring the bottom up just above this little root that's sticking up, or rock, whatever it is. I'm going to go right to about there, and I'm just going to take a little off the top, leave a little of the sky, and maybe go there, and I'm going to apply a vignette again. Let's go full screen, and yep, that's the answer. That's all I needed, just that little bit of fine cropping to finish it off. And I think we got a winner here. This is definitely going to get printed and hung. Particularly if you think that here's where we started. That was the original raw capture, and there's where we ended up. Hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun. Love this image. This is definitely going to get printed and hung. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon, and keep enjoying Photo Friday. Thanks for reading. Bye-bye.